Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us today on a bit of a unique video. I'm joined by Jess. Jess is one of my latest students to pass a driving test, and she did it a couple of weeks ago now. So what I thought would be really good is to have a chat with Jess and look at her experiences of the first lesson, right through to the first few hours on the road, to her theory test, and then ultimately how she found the driving test and her experience of that being so fresh. So yeah, let's get on with it. Okay, so we've got a few questions that we'll have a chat with Jess about. So thanks very much, first of all, for agreeing to take part in this. So first thing I think I'd like to kind of find out from you is, what were your expectations prior to you decided to drive? So did you think you're going to make a good learner? Were you worried about anything? What kind of were your thoughts about, even before your first lesson?
Yeah. Well, I think I was always quite excited to start driving, about the independence side of it. And before I even got in the car, I was worried about the gears and how they would work, and I think that was the main thing I was worried about. And then as soon as I got in the car, it was the clutch that was my struggle, and how much impact it has on the car.
I think that's quite a common worry. Is I think most people say, gears is my kind of my bugaboo a little bit. But like you say, I think at first you were often raising that clutch really quickly at first,
because you think the faster you move it, the faster you'll get off, but it's the opposite.
What kind of learner do you think you would be? Did you think you'd take it quite quickly? Were you worried that perhaps you might take you longer?
I think I was worried it might take me longer, because well, that kind of changed once I'd got in the car the first time, but I thought there'd be a lot to think about, and there was a lot to think about.
Because you think about that first lesson, what we did in that first lesson compared to the first lesson on the road. How did you view the two? Were you quite surprised how quickly you picked up with that first lesson?
I think with the first lesson I was quite, it kind of exceeded my expectations, because you are just doing very simple, like up and down a road with like nothing else to think about. But then once you get into like the main like built up areas, that's when you start to think about more than one thing at once. And that's when you start to think, it's a lot harder than the first lesson.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just next thing I think I'd like to kind of explore with you is a little bit more about, so you've done that first lesson on the road, and you actually only did one lesson on the nursery road, didn't you? And then you drove home on the first lesson, didn't you? Which is great. So you've done your first lesson and you've driven home. How were your next few lessons in comparison to that first lesson? What were your experiences of that, both positive and negative?
I think after the first lesson, it is very intimidating on like the main roads, and because you've got loads more to think about, you're doing more than one thing at once. But then it is always important to remember that you're not alone, and you will be corrected by your instructor if you do something wrong, and if you get into that kind of situation.
How did you find the first few minutes on the main road?
It was really scary. It was. But I think it was quite exciting as well, because you are doing it by yourself, really. So yeah.
What about anything that you were surprised about on that with the first few hours?
I think so, because some areas are quite different, and if you know the area, then I think it'll be easier. I was quite surprised. I was surprised about how much I remembered from the first lesson, and that I'd actually committed to memory as well. Okay,
so one of the things as well that we spoke about, even on that first lesson, was your theory test. With the current state of the world with a pandemic, clearly at the moment things are on hold, or were on hold at the time that you were learning. So let's talk about your theory test. How did you find it? What did you use to revise? Any tips that you want to share about your theory test?
I think it's important to have driven a bit before you do your theory test, because then you can kind of picture yourself in the car, and I think it made more sense to me. I use the app Theory Test Pro, and it's an app that you can get on your phone, and because I used to get the train a lot, it was so easy just to just to revise, waiting for the train, on the train. Yeah.
So the theory test itself, how did you find the actual test? Any tips that you want to share about the day itself, or the morning, or whatever it was?
Yeah, I always found the hazard perception way easier than the questions. But on the day, I think it's important not to stress, because it was quite stressful going into like the building and sitting down at the computer. But I think you've just got to keep calm and then remember what you've revised, and then quit.
How did the app that you used help you with the questions first of all?
Because they do it in sections, don't they?
Yeah.
And
So
then you can focus on the specific section. Like if you find one more difficult, you can do more questions on that, and you can do mock tests on it. The timing on it, don't they?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the questions are 57 minutes. How do you find that on the day, the questions itself?
I think you will do it a lot faster than you need to, but I think it's also important to not rush it and check it over as many times as you need to, because you do have that luxury, don't you?
You've got 57 minutes for the questions alone.
Yeah.
So one thing that if you remember what we spoke about, is that I said when it comes to questions, don't be afraid to go back to a previous question.
But you can flag them.
You can flag them, absolutely. What made it so straight, not easy, but how the questions themselves, you said they were quite straightforward?
Yeah, because the wording of some questions is quite difficult. So if you remember some wording of it and then know the answer to that, it's quite easy to remember it that way if you do that.
How much would you say that you revised for it, truthfully?
I did revise quite a lot, because I remember because of the pandemic, you would have had to wait a long time to get another one. So I remember being quite stressed, because then as soon as you do this, you can book your actual driving test. So I think I did spend a lot of time on it, and just because it was so easy, like before bed, like, and then when you're waiting to get on the train and the bus and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, so once you'd passed your theory test, you then arranged to actually book your driving test. So we got something in the diary
straight away.
So you've obviously at this point had a few hours in the car. Was there a moment or a point where you felt that it became a little bit more natural, that you weren't maybe as stressed or as anxious about driving?
Yeah, I think the moment is when you're driving with the instructor and you're able to think about other things when you're driving, and we'd have a chat, and I'd just be driving and then realise it is just me driving this car. But I think I don't really think there's a specific thing or moment.
Like a light bulb moment.
I don't think so, because one lesson you could be thinking, I feel confident, and then something could happen next lesson, a couple of lessons later, and you'll think it's a step back. But it's important not to let that.
Did you find that? Did you often think, and you'd leave a lesson, think, I think I've got it now. I think I'm getting to grips with this.
Yeah.
You get in the car, maybe the next lesson, think, this don't feel natural today, and I don't feel like I'm making progress, and you're making little errors. Did you find that at all?
Yeah, because do you remember there was that one test route that we did that I found.
Was it one in Batley by any chance?
Yeah. I found that quite difficult, and that really set my confidence back a lot.
It did.
And I was very stressed about that. And after that was quite far in as well. If
I remember rightly, it was only a couple of weeks prior to your test, wasn't it? And you'd done it. We've done it before, this particular route, and the minute that you knew that we were doing that route again, something happened.
It's a mental thing, isn't it? Because you'll get yourself worked up about it when it's just driving like you have been doing. And it's very important not to let that impact everything else, because you do know you wouldn't be booked in for your test if you didn't. So
I think even what's important, even on the day of your test, I don't know about you, but did you perhaps feel going into the test, I'm the best I can be? Were there any niggles about particular elements of your driving, manoeuvres, roundabouts? Was there anything that you still felt a little bit anxious about?
I think I was definitely anxious about my manoeuvres before, because and especially the days leading up to my driving test, we did have a few lessons that didn't go that well. And same thing, it's important not to let that affect your nerves or anything, especially close to your test.
Yeah.
And because it will all come together at like the last minute.
And it did, didn't it? Which we'll talk about. So we're going to come on to the driving test in a bit. But I think it's really important, like you say, that it's okay for us as instructors to try to convince students that learning isn't a linear process. There's going to be lessons where you'll get in the car and you'll have a really good productive lesson and you'll think, I've got this now, and the next time or next week you'll get back in the car again and think, why doesn't this feel as natural? And you can absolutely agree to that. Okay, Jess, last little bit now. Let's talk about your actual driving test. Okay, so you booked your driving test and you got a week to go before it. How did you feel in those last few lessons going into it?
Felt very nervous, especially because some of the lessons didn't go the best that they could have gone. And yeah, because also the fact that I knew I would not be getting another test for a long time, and all my friends had passed and things like that. Just a lot of pressure. I felt a lot.
What about the night before? Can you remember the night before? How do you feel then?
Yeah, I think we
did. You
sleep? We did a little lesson before, just to go over a few little things. But I think it's important to not do a lot of driving, like the night before your test or the day of your test, because if you don't know it by then, you're not really going to know it.
Yeah, you're not going to become a better driver.
No.
In that last lesson.
No.
Okay, let's now talk about the actual day. Okay, what preparation did you do even before I got you? What anything that you were doing before?
Well, yeah, I think it's important to eat and to drink before
don't faint
before you get in your car.
You don't faint.
And yeah, just try and settle your nerves as much as you can, which it's not going to be possible.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think just try and don't put too much pressure on yourself, which is again impossible.
It's easy. That's easier said than done to do that, because it's a big day.
Yeah.
I can remember my test. 125 years ago. It means a lot. So it's easier said than done to do that. So what about then? That lesson beforehand. Did it go well? Do you think it went well?
I think it wasn't the best. But you had said to me, don't get stressed about the last lesson. I think you just go over the few little things that you're worried the most about. Like, I can't remember what we did.
I think we did manoeuvres.
Yeah,
we did a couple of manoeuvres, didn't we? Because they were always your slight concern, weren't they? I think manoeuvres.
I think just do the things that you're most worried about, and then it's kind of just like the peace of mind that you've just done it recently.
Yeah, because I think if you remember rightly, you did the parallel on really well, and that perhaps gave you a little bit more of a boost to get you through.
Well, I got that on my test.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come on to this manoeuvre in a minute. What would be good now to share is the actual what happened when we arrived. How did you feel? Parking up at the test centre. So obviously we've arrived at the test centre only 5 minutes now prior to your test time. Obviously the examiner comes out when he went through all that. How did you feel when he called your name and he was coming over towards you?
When we drove in, my parking wasn't great, was it? When we first got into the test centre.
No.
But yeah, we were we went inside and we weren't meant to be inside.
Yeah.
But then we came out. We came out and then we were waiting more. Yeah, he asked me to sign some things.
Declaration, so
And then went over to my car. And then I think the nerves will settle a bit because you've kind of got to perform when your examiner comes.
That's a good way of looking at it.
And you kind of like just get into like the mindset of this is the test.
Yeah. So the first thing you did was your tell me question.
Yeah.
How did you find those questions? Did we do a lot of revision?
Yeah, because I think it's easy marks, isn't it, if you know the show me tell me questions. Because I got what's it called? Open the bonnet.
Yeah, and identify one of your 3 areas. Yeah.
And then I got open the window.
On the show me.
Yeah. But I think if it's just easy, it's one less thing to worry about if you know the show me tell me questions quite well.
Because we did a lot of revision. About it. And I always think that, you say you're not going to necessarily fail your test if you get the tell me question wrong. But we spoke about it's actually a good first impression. If you're confident with your answer, the examiner, I think, will think, right, Jess is right, she's here to play now, she's serious about it.
Especially because I did it in my own car as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've got even less.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah.
Well, they're more anxious because they don't have dual control. So we spoke a lot about, in the first few minutes, giving him the reassurance that you're not going to go through a wall. You know, you're not knocking anybody down because he's got less ability to control it. Okay, so you've done your question. You've gone through the debrief that they give you at the start. Was a point where you forgot about the nerves, or you didn't feel them on your test?
Yeah, I think because you're trying to just concentrate on everything that you're doing and try not to do anything wrong. I think because it did go so fast,
right.
I can't remember it really because it did just go so fast. I remember at some points thinking that I'd failed.
Okay. Where was that? What had you done to do that?
Well, when I was doing my parallel park, I didn't get it right first time, so I had to go back out again, fix it. Then I got it right second time. Thought I'd failed it then, and then drove off, going up a hill on a junction, stalled, fixed it quite quickly. Thought again, then failed again.
So go back to Manoeuvre. Why did you think? Because we spoke about on your Manoeuvre.
Yeah.
You know, if it doesn't happen first time, you can adjust it and fix it as long as it's safe. What was it? Just the nerves thinking? No, the worst case scenario.
I think it was like the length of time as well, because I did spend quite a lot of time trying to fix it.
Right.
So I thought that wouldn't be great.
Yeah. And then going back to your junction, you said you failed. You thought you failed on that junction.
Yeah.
Why? What was your worry? Just because you stalled?
Yeah. Luckily there was no one behind me.
Right.
But I don't think I did fix it. Put my brake on quite fast.
Yeah.
And then I got off.
Right.
But yeah, I thought I failed then as well.
I think there's what's important to say. There's a lot of kind of myths, and I'm going to do a video shortly about breaking some of the myths about how I failed on a driving test.
Yeah.
Stalling is one of the things that we often talk about as instructors, that if you, depending on the context of where and how you stall, it's not necessarily a fail. It will go down as a driving fault. But where Jess stalled on a junction, if she hadn't have regained the control quickly and therefore was waiting and holding traffic up, yes, it would have gone down as a serious fault. So I think that's something that you kind of have to have a conversation with your instructor about, is breaking some of those myths down. What about the examiner? How do you find him? How was interaction with him?
Well, I'd heard lots of stories about people with different examiners and how some just hadn't talked to them at all and how they were very standoffish. But I think you just got to remember that they are actually people and they don't want to fail you.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know, that you've just got to take it as it comes. You might get one that's more chatty than another one. Yeah, just try and relax still.
How was your examiner? Did he chat? Did he not chat?
There was a little bit of chat. Asked me if I was working and a few things like that, but not a lot really.
Not a lot of conversation.
Because I think it's important not to maybe distract them.
Did you find that conversation helped at all, or do you think I'd rather you not talk to me? I want to get on with my
yeah,
work?
it's because it's then might relax you a little bit. Maybe it's different for other people. Maybe they won't want to chat, but yeah.
So you said the test went really quickly.
Yeah.
You felt it went really, really quickly.
Yeah, I did.
Obviously, there's a lot happening on your test. You know, you've got your manoeuvre, you've got your independent section. You're about to pull up on the left on a few occasions, and then.
Well, you thought I failed straight away.
Well, yeah, because I saw Jess pull out the test centre and park up straight away. Now, at the moment, with the current state of how the world is and the pandemic, that if you were to fail, and I'm sure you perhaps know this, that you don't continue on the route, you come immediately back. And I thought you'd failed straight away, but it wasn't. It was just one of the and asked to pull up on the left in a safe place. So thank God it didn't all go belly up. Now you've gone through the test, and all that. What would you say to if you could rewind time, like Back to the Future style?
Oh yeah, okay.
What would you say to the Jess 2.5-3 weeks ago? Now you know what you've been through.
Yeah, I think I'd say don't get hung up on the lessons before the test, even if they go really badly. I think trust your instructor, because they'll know when you're ready to go and be a test. Also, probably, I know it's easier said than done. Don't get too stressed. Try not to feel the pressure. Yeah, try It's hard to say enjoy it because you probably won't enjoy
you're not good. Yeah, so, yeah. I think you're right. It's the lessons leading up to it sometimes can't be the best, or sometimes aren't the best ones. But not to dwell on that. You know, like say, if we as instructors felt that you weren't ready, we'd adjust it and we'd put it back. So that's really important to stress. Okay, so again, good news is obviously Jess passed first time with 3 minors, and yeah, it was a great result. Well done. Okay, I hope that's been of some use. Thanks again to Jess for taking her time out in a busy schedule to spend and put this video together. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for your time. What would be really great is if you could subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon for future video notifications. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you soon.